Neha, do you want to put? I mean, how do I put this up though? It's done. It's streaming. It's starting to stream now.
Oh, it's starting to stream now?
Should we put this up
This.
on the page or? I'm gonna send you the link. Neha, do you want to put? I mean, how do I put this
Hey
up?
Jeff, can you email me the link?
Yes.
Okay. So I can put this link on WITI Bay Area page. If somebody can put it on Facebook, WITI Facebook page, the main one.
Okay. Hey, Janet.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good.
Hi, Janet.
You. Hi, Neha. How are you?
Hi. Good, good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Hey, Carolyn. I don't know if you're on. You are on mute. If you'd like to say hi, you're welcome to. And Jeff, maybe that's something too. Richard could probably just put it on the front page of the site.
Caltech MIT.
Okay, I'm going to bring the speakers in a minute, and then we're going to get going. So give me 1 sec, everybody. I'll be right back. Okay, everybody, welcome. I'm going to bring the speakers in, and I know we have a bunch of people just joining too. So give everybody a minute to get on. And then I'm going to go ahead and make, let's see, we'll make Renee a co-host. Welcome everybody back. And those of you just getting on, give me 1 sec just to get everything set up. And Neha, I'm going to make. And Renee, that's you, what I see. Okay, good. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining today's session. Very excited about our, I think this is our second or third cybersecurity awareness month panel. Neha, is it the second?
This is second.
Second. Okay, good. So I know I saw many of you on the last panel that was more technical. We're so excited to have Renee and Rhonda here. You know, we're going to talk about the voting, how cybersecurity is affecting, how, you know, what can go wrong with cybersecurity. You're going to learn a lot. Please ask questions. And then I'm going to give it over to you, Renee. Hold on, wait. Okay, you are muted. Rhonda's unmuted. Now you're good.
Now I'm good. Okay. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I'm Renee Redwood, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. David, I'm hearing reverberation.
I am too. I'm going to fix it right now. Do you want to try it again, Renee?
Try it again. This is better. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you on Cybersecurity Awareness Month in our conversation today on cybersecurity in elections. And I am thrilled and honored to be co-paneling, I guess, with Rhonda Childress. Rhonda, welcome.
Hi, everyone. How are you? And thank you for inviting me here. I'll be honest with you, this year was the first year I participated in some of the security around the elections, but it's been an interesting ride, to be honest with you.
Right, great. And I've just a little background. I have worked in elections and politics for many years. At one point, I was the director of political operations for the Democratic National Committee and was part of the team that established what we call P2TV, Promote and Protect the Vote, P2TV, Promote and Protect the Vote, as a strategy and a mechanism by which we could seek to ensure that we had voters, and that when they voted, that their votes would be counted as cast, which has become even more important over time as we've seen ongoing challenges with our election system. Yes, it works. So first and foremost, it does work. But like any system and structure, it's time for us to kind of rethink it and relook at it. And that's what's been happening over the last several elections in particular, particularly around presidential elections. After the debacle in the 2000 election with the hanging chads, there has been a renewed focus on how do we deal with election administration, the administration of our elections in our country. One of the things we learned is that because we are the United States with an S, each state, as well as the district and the other territories within the US construct, have different ways in which they do the vote. It tends to be a state function, though we have federal laws that govern overall certain types of behavior around the elections. It tends to be very state specific in how elections are actually managed on a day-to-day basis, what rules will be applied, even to the point of where we look at the different size paperweights, if indeed people were doing voter registration. So it's variable. And because of the variability by state, we as the United States are not able to have international observers to address our elections because you have to have a single system, and that we do not have. Even within states, the technology that is available, from paper pencil technology to the punch cards to electronic voting with receipts to electronic voting without receipts. Online voting is something that Rhonda's going to talk a little bit about as an opportunity that we have as a nation, as we think about how do we engage our people in one of the most basic and fundamental rights and responsibility in our country. And so I am pleased to be part of this conversation with Rhonda, and we are going to welcome you all to participate, utilizing both the chat as well as we'll have a question and answer period. And so please do put questions that you have. We welcome them in the chat as we go along. Rhonda, do you want to go ahead and open up here?
Sure. I think one of the things and questions that I get most often from my colleagues and from several friends and people around me is, what's changed? What has changed since 2016 when it comes to security and the election structure? And, just a brief history. In 2016, probably everybody thought they were fairly immutable. The corporations even today thought, things would not happen to them. And I think with, what happened in 2016, what's happened to the corporations since 2017, I think everybody has come to realize that we are not as immutable as we think we are. We are targets. We will continue to be targets of other countries who would like to disrupt our way of life and potentially influence these outcomes that we perceive. So there has been a lot of work done with the government and with the election commissions and those entities, even for things like the debates that just happened, the presidential debate that just happened. A lot of security and a lot of focus around how do we ensure that there's no interference from other parties in these types of situations. So just like with enterprises who have moved and realized that they have to improve their security, the elections have realized that they have to improve their security. So the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA as we call them, has done probably one of the most tremendous jobs of educating, ensuring that people understand, how to recognize these signs of interference and how to report and to get help and support for these situations. And as part of what they've done is they're bringing things out that probably enterprises have known for a while and have experienced, and they're wrapping those into the things that we see as part of the election. So never before have we seen like a security resource library even before this election, I believe, right? And how to have a cyber incident, how to detect cyber incidents, and how do you respond to them? These are things that enterprises have had, but not that it's there. And Renee, like you said, due to the nature of the way we conduct our elections, it's not like they can have a one size fits all either. So they have to give guidance, where they can, and the election officials, have to take those. So it's been an interesting observation as I followed this throughout the press and things like that. Just today, in a UK newspaper, they were actually discussing cybersecurity and the US election. So this is not just a US type activity, but it's an international activity, and we are on the world stage, yes, being inspected and watched to see how we do and how well our security evolves for this event.
And let me add a couple of points here as well. So thank you, Ron. That's really helpful in understanding what's happened and transpired since 2016. And it's been a progression over time. It's been a building. As technology has changed, so has voting, right? In some instances, but oftentimes it is done under the guise of individuals who may not have technology backgrounds. Oftentimes, we then bring in the tech people afterwards, after we come up with, legislate something, and then bring in the tech people on, like, can you make it work? Hopefully we're now thinking a little bit differently, that we need to look at what technologies can be used. And, Rhonda, before we even got on, talked about how we have become more of an online nation. And the COVID crisis has created a different world order on how we interact with our systems, including our government and the right to vote, and how that vote is cast. I want to just kind of take a couple of steps back on just some of the what we're looking at in terms of issues around cybersecurity and elections. That we know that experts are far more concerned about hackers than we ever have been in the past. And that was a learning from 2016, though we did have hackers before, right? We even had them in 2000. Whenever we first started with electronic voting, there was always an opportunity. And of course, someone's going to find that opportunity to do something not appropriate. But we've seen areas where where there's been a cyber interface, right? An IT interface. So we're looking at kind of like polling sites, on the voter rolls, how for disinformation, the utilization of a lot of the targeted disinformation campaigns, even now happening, and targeting select demographic cohorts. Because of the specificity by which technology has allowed us to interact and engage with the public as well as information. The Brennan Center for Justice is one of the leading organizations. It's a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that spends a lot of time looking at election integrity and election security. And the director, I love the quote that he gave. He said, "Millions of people are voting in a new way, and that creates an environment that's ripe for effective disinformation." You know, where's your polling place? Making sure that the information that people are actually logging on for the folks who have access to internet. And that's been another big thing we found, the ongoing disparity. But the folks who do have access, making sure that you're accessing appropriate websites that give you the accurate information. I see Laura just put in the chat, and we're going to come back to this, 411vote.org. To be able to go online and get accurate information. That's an important piece. Disinformation concerns are about not only depressing voter turnout by confusing people. You know, can I register to vote? If I didn't, am I registered to vote? I downloaded a voter registration form and I'm not sure if the form is current. Again, these are all things that interfere with technology and around the questions around cybersecurity. The notion around the concerns not just about Russian hacking, which is what we heard a lot about in 2016, but other nations that have that same kind of capability. A report from the Department of Homeland Security that talked about it's not just Russia that we need to be concerned about. It's other nations. Again, the global, you know, Rhonda just said the UK had a piece on this. This is a global phenomena because what we do affects others. We're not in this world by ourselves. Our relationships with other nations are in jeopardy, depending upon who we choose as a nation for our elected officials. I am very clear. I am trying not to be partisan here. I'm just going to be real blunt. I'm trying not to be partisan. But because of my experience and the work that I have done over time, I see how communities that look like me, when we talk about diversity, I see how communities are targets consistently of disinformation, targets of list purging that sometimes so-called happen accidentally. Is it organized mismanagement, deliberate mismanagement of systems under the tech rubric? The utilization and the dependence that we have on electricity in order to enable our technology. And yet we see in some polling places, even here in Maryland, you know, people think of the like maybe more rural areas in Montgomery County, which is one of the wealthiest counties in this country. Voter election irregularities because they had electronic voting equipment, but they only had 4 extension cords to be able to plug in over 20 pieces of equipment. And so while that is not a IT problem, when we had paper pencil, we didn't need an extension cord, right? So that the equipment, making sure that the equipment is appropriately serviced, that we've got access to electricity so that we can plug the equipment in. We see other areas around what we would call voter suppression. How do we use disinformation? How do we use past stories about what happened as ways in which to suppress the vote? How do we look online and along the disinformation? There are Facebook posts and other types of social media posts that said, if you are late on your utility bill, you vote November 4th. The election's November 3rd, all right? So the ways in which this, our elections are influenced or are influenced adversely, having adverse impact, it runs the full gamut. And the challenge, I think one of the concerns that a lot of people have as we talk with the public is, will my vote be counted? Whether I do it as a mail-in, will it be counted? If I go in person, Will my vote be registered as counted? Example, in Houston, Texas. Rhonda, Texas is your state, right?
It is. It definitely
In
is. Yep.
Houston, Texas, we had incidents where people had called into the 866-hour vote, and you should put that in their 866-hour vote, had called in to say that they were at their voting machine and that they had pushed the button to vote for one candidate and it registered for another candidate. So they pressed the clear. They pushed it again and it still voted for the other candidate. So this is a cyber problem. It's like, how was this programmed? Right? And maybe it's, and Ron might say, Renee, that's really not cyber. Right?
It is an IT problem. And I think part of it comes down to, we do have aging equipment that we've used. We've not invested in the modernization. I think what happened in 2016 brings to the forefront that, maybe what we need to do in this age where we're living is to move to more modern technology, like an online voting mechanism that would allow you to not, like we saw in Georgia, standing in line for 12 hours or so, 11, 13, whatever the right double-digit number was, right. but standing in line for that amount of time, So how do we secure it in such a way that we can have these online votings and allow the people who don't have access to technology to vote also? But I would really like to see where the majority could vote from the comfort of their home and make sure that their vote gets counted and counted properly. So everybody would be more likely to participate in these things. Because we hear a lot of stories, I can't take time off from work. Well, okay, let's all talk about, a lot of employers are giving that time because to do these kinds of things. But if you were able to at home and you have good security practices, able to register your vote, you'd be more likely to do that and to participate in the process and to do these kinds of things. So my vision for the future is, I would hope at some point we would get to the point where we have, secure hygiene practices. We're working from home. So now with the COVID-19, a lot of people are getting into that, Renee, where they realize, because one of the things I'm doing these daily blogs as part of my work job, and I stumbled across a big fact that 81% of the people don't even change the default password on their router in their home. 81%. So let's stop and think about that means. So, as we get, I think, more of our security hygiene in our homes, where it will enable us to then go to that point where we've been able to do online voting. My son was recently deployed, and it was a last minute kind of situation. I'm like, are you going to be able to get everything in so you can get your vote and you can make sure that your vote counts? And luckily the U.S. military is very good about making sure that they're enabled to do that. But not everybody has that military background, because I know in a couple of elections I was deployed, sent out of the country because of work issues at the last minute. And I planned to vote. I was not able to do it. So, if we had the capability to vote from where you are, and the right security constraints in place, I think we would be able to do it. Voting by mail.
Yeah.
I know there's been a lot of conversation around voting by mail. I have no data that says that voting by mail is not secure, to be honest with you.
Because there isn't any data out there. That's why.
I've not seen anything that says voting by data suddenly increases, where dead people vote to to people who aren't registered to vote and these kinds of things. So I just, I think everybody, whether you're in the United States or not in the United States, but you're a U.S. citizen, we've got to come up with more modern ways to enable everybody to participate and to make sure that it's secure, even if we have to go to things like multi-factor authentication, which are, I know who I am. I have something, my password, something I am, maybe a fingerprint, something like that, an application on your phone. Most of us have phones now where we could get some kind of token to prove we are who we say we are. kind of situation. So I think we're this COVID-19, while it's been painful, at least for me in the security world, has given us the opportunity to leap forward quite aggressively if we wanted to in this election era. And I'm wholly looking forward to what the government is going to do in the next 4 years to improve that, what we've done using virtual private networks and those kinds of things. So it's just amazing what we can take this situation we're in and actually turn it for good. Because I think if it hadn't been for COVID-19, we would be a very long time dragging everybody into the 21st century, as I call it, allowing us to do online voting and those kinds of situations.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to also share with you, thank you, Rhonda, that's so right on point, and think about, the folks who are part of WITI, Women in Technology International, and wanting to be able to say to you all, you are the experts in this area, and how can you bring your expertise to be in service to our nation? And I know that there's been conversations, and I'm not a tech person. It's everything for me to be able to figure out Zoom. But I look to folks like you all and say, how can WITI become a voice for change? How can Women in Technology and International, this network of women who have this cyber expertise, make themselves available to our government, to our elected officials, and offered? So I'm like writing all these notes down, Rhonda, as you're talking about how we could actually do this in a big area. When you talked about that multi-factor authentication, many of us who work in this election and work around this area of election administration are not tech people. And so for me to hear something like this, I'm thinking why don't we do this?
It's things that we're going, there's common things that we can do. I know people think, oh my God, if we go to online voting, that's going to make it more possible for either internal domestic things to happen or foreign things to happen. Yes, you do create, but there have been other countries that have done this very successfully. Anytime you do something, you're creating a target. The question is how do you successfully secure that so everybody can participate in? And there are techniques that are created today and that are coming along that we can use to do that, to not make it. Now, and let's be honest, we already had, the manipulation a little bit from 2016. So the question is what can we do to institutionalize it so it's a common experience for everybody with common security? So if I'm not living in a small town of Belgrade, Nebraska, right, I'm having a different experience than somebody in Chicago, Illinois, especially in a federal election. You would like for it to all be a similar experience and with the similar security that we have. And so there are ways that I believe this can be done. And you're quite right. The WITI community can come together and help contribute our knowledge and our thoughts and our processes, and where we've been able to secure some of the world's largest infrastructures to these elections.
Absolutely. And people worry about, what's going to happen with the cyber. We didn't have to have cyber to have Chads. That had nothing to do with cyber. So, any protocol that we put in place, we need safeguards, right? Exactly. And so when people say, oh, because it's technology, we're going to have a whole bunch more people trying to get in. I bank online. Granted, sure, there's a risk. There's a risk with anything. We had it where the notion where people would stand in line and write their ballot, right? And what did we put in place at that point before people could write the ballot? We put a literacy test. So part of our challenge for our nation is, do we have a will as a nation to allow all who are eligible, all citizens who are eligible past the 18 or older are registered to vote and then do vote? So, part of the challenge is, do we have a will as a nation to make sure that the system of democracy is secure so that we can uphold the basic premise and principle of who we are, you know, with liberty and justice for all. You know, every vote counts. You know, we run around here doing these every vote count campaigns, and then people always say to us, except for, and then they list all the people who've been purged off the voter rolls, right? Then they list all the people who they know who voted in Florida, who they assume had a hanging chad, not a full chad, right? Then they, you know, so part of it becomes the will. And, you know, I know when Rhonda and I talked, I guess it was yesterday, one of the things we had talked about was really just encouraging people to move beyond the disinformation, to move beyond a sense of, well, it doesn't really matter anyways, because there's an electoral college. And so even if I do vote, one of the things we learned in 2016 was just because you get the popular vote doesn't mean that you get the victory, right? And so how do we create a system, right, where every vote does count, every vote does matter, every vote is counted as intended. And you always hear me say counted as intended, right? Because we've had the incidents where people have touched the thing and voting for one candidate and it registered for another.
There's always going to be issues, okay? You know, nothing is going to be issue free, Renee.
Mm-hmm.
But the situation is can we put a system in place
Mm-hmm.
that will allow us to have the best security around? So you talk about your bank. You know,
Mhm.
I lived in Australia 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And for me to bank, I
Mhm.
had to get a token on my phone
Wow.
10 years ago.
Wow.
So there are mechanisms that allow us, and then there's going to be some people, like I have an over 80, I won't say how old she really is, girlfriend who
Mhm.
will not touch anything electronic when it comes to banking. And we have to be able and make sure that we accommodate those people. Okay, we want to make sure that every vote counts. So how do we accommodate those people? But if you think about the capabilities for us to potentially, you know, do this in an electronic format, you know, and lessen the lines, lessen the wait time,
Yep.
you know, enable everybody to participate, it opens such a world of opportunities for everybody to participate in this process.
Mhm. Yeah. And, you know, you talk about the wait lines. That's one of the areas, the primary areas that they're worried about. And the ability to vote, you know, through technology could actually abate that. I mean, they're technically, you know, I'm thinking like how people walk around with these iPads, right? Could we not have at the election sites, could we not have secure pieces of equipment, you know, Rhonda, you know this technology better than anybody, that they could come up to folks, you know, people who can't, with disabilities, be able to come up to the car.
Yeah.
The same way we've had the, you know, with the COVID testing, you can drive up and they can test you there and they can put it into, you know, they can put it into a solution and then send it through a scanner. We could have that. I mean, again, technology could actually be our friend to enable our democracy. If indeed we have the will, we clearly have the knowledge, you know, and so the question becomes what blocks us from creating this kind of inclusive system?
Yeah, some of it was fear, I think, that and acceptance, fear and acceptance are often blockers to these kinds of things. But if you look at what's been done since 2016 to enable this election right now, I would say we're probably the most secure that I've ever seen. They have cyber incident plans, which may or may not resonate with some people. You may understand what that is, but what that means is if they see something where they believe a cyber incident has happened, they know what to do at that point in time, and they've rehearsed it. And these kinds of things. They've even at the debates have gone to great lengths to test the security to make sure that, you know, during the broadcast there will, you know, that it can go on successfully, and that there won't be anything happening from, you know, phishing, as we call it, phishing attacks, to social phishing, you know, trying to act like somebody else to gain access to the arenas and those kinds of things. So they have gone to extreme lengths, and I've got to hand it to the US government that has been doing these kinds of pieces of work. It's a thankless task. No one likes it, but I think they've done a really good job in making sure that to enable us to vote this election. It is the securest that I've seen, and they've done everything very well. It's not their fault COVID-19 happened, but we do need to take advantage of it. But I would encourage everybody to go vote. If someone tells you your vote's not going to count or it's not secure, I think you just need to ignore them and go and cast your vote. Stay 6 feet away, bring your mask if you're going to do it that way. If not, check. I'll be honest with you. I'm amazed that people go, well, I'm not so sure about the security, but if you look at, a 411 vote, people are willing to put personal information into a website to find out if they're registered or to get the information to register, which that site, I've got to tell you, even I went and looked before the deadline of register in Texas. It was last Monday, I believe. It might have been the 5th, I'm trying to remember the date. But to make sure that I was registered to vote, just to make sure that I was there, know where my polling place is. It's all there in one site. So whoever put that piece of technology up, and I think yesterday you said it was the League of Women Voters.
League of Women Voters. And it's actually Vote 411.
Yeah, vote for. I looked at that link.
I know. I was looking at that thinking, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay. Both of us were looking at the same thing.
Good. Yeah.
Vote411.org. Vote.
Yeah. Vote411.org. It has the wealth of information. And I think that they've done a good job securing it. If you look at it, all the things that we security-wise tell you to look for, when you enter the information, you have the lock. It's using, secure technology. But the League of Women Voters have done a great job pulling everything together from our disparate states.
Yes.
And putting it all in one place, so you don't have to go, okay, where do I go if I live in Texas? Where do I go if I live in Nebraska or Kentucky? To do this, it's all in one spot. And I think they've done a really good job in securing that website. I poked around on it quite a bit to see what I could see, and it looks good. And so if we can do that, if we're willing to bank, our money, we should be willing to look forward in our technology and enable ourselves. But, I do want to say, I do hope that everybody does get out and vote. It is safe. It is secure. Vote early if you can, obviously, to avoid lines and maybe interaction with people who might not be as well as we would hope they would be in these technical, in these challenging times. But, I do think that, from what I've seen, they've done a great job securing things.
Yeah. And that Vote 411 effort is with the League of Women Voters, because they're still one of the most trusted sources for voter information, number one, and trust becomes important. That's the trust is the competence born out of character and competence of an individual or an institution, and they've been around forever. So the League of Women Voters, and as a matter of fact, I'm always talking about diversity, they have been aggressively diversifying their workforce and recognizing how different communities are treated and access elections. And so they've worked in partnership with a host of nonprofit organizations that participate in civic engagement, many of which that they're in partnership with are things like the Brennan Center, like the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, like the Advancement Project. And we can go on and on and on with the names of the Ms. Foundation. I mean, just a lot of organizations have put energy and effort and resources, human and financial, into it, even helping League of Women Voters and others to raise money to be able to set up that kind of technology, because we've learned over time how technology really does help us. Being able to go on and type in your zip code and know where you can go to vote in your street address. Because one of the challenges we have constantly in elections is that people show up at the wrong polling place. If they are going to show up in person, now you can go online. That wasn't something we had in the 2000 election. We didn't have that. 2004, we started developing that, working with folks in technology, being able to say, here's the stuff that we know based on our experience on the ground in elections. What are some of the solutions? And the tech people have been coming to the table consistently. And every time we said, well, here's a problem, the tech folks are helping us find ways out of it. One of the big areas was making sure that it was accessible for people with disabilities who might have visual impairment, right? And so there are technological remedies that are available for people who are visually impaired to make sure that they can vote. And, of course, everyone said, well, we put everything in Braille. And we're like, yeah, but we also have online capabilities, right? And how can we bring some of those technology skills right into the polling place as well to make
I think Renee, we're going to have to do that to get the younger voters to start to do that. Because with my son, my youngest one, he's like, you mean I got to get in the car, I have to drive, then I have to stand in line, then I have to present paper and sign, and then I can finally go and hit a button to cast my vote. And I'm like, yes. And he point blank asked me, he said, has this changed since you started voting? And I had to step back and think, I'm like, first off, are you implying I'm old? We'll let that one go. But he's right that the processes of up to the point where you hit the buttons, has not changed at all. The technology of the button pushing has, to the CHADs, to the electronic voting machines, to those kinds of things have changed. But, if you look at it, we are going to start having more and more problems if we don't modernize this in getting younger people to vote and to participate moving forward, because this is not the world they live in. They're not used to, signing a check. Right. My son has no checks. If I can't tap if he has to insert his credit card in something he doesn't like, he wants to tap his check, he wants to tap his credit card, and that's the end of that conversation. He doesn't want to have to sign something. He just wants to tap it and go and get what he wants to go. He wants to order from that large online place that gives you those great boxes where everything shows up to your house. And the UPS guy delivers things. We want to be able to get our groceries ordered and have them show up. We're in this on-demand society, and if we don't modernize and secure the way we vote going forward, we are going to, at least in my opinion, start to potentially disenfranchise those younger voters who are going to be key. As my son often reminds me, I'm in charge when you are old and infirmed on where you're going to live. So, we have to remember these are the ones that are going to take over the future and carry our democracy forward for us.
That's right. That's right. And we need to have tools that are relevant
to them. Yes. And right now, the tools are not relevant to them.
How many people can stand? I'm thankful for the people who were willing to stand in line 11, 12, and 13 hours yesterday. I remember in the US Senate race, when Senator Tester was first running in Montana, it was the college students that gave him his margin of victory. And they had the same response, Rhonda. You mean we got to go in line?
Yes.
I can order pizza online. Online, not in line, right? And, it was finally saying, because you don't have the online capability, you got to get in line. And thank God for some of the professors at the University of Montana who said, since the line is long, we'll teach classes, we'll do teachings while our students wait. Was their way in which to say your vote matters. We're not going to change this system and get to an online system if you don't vote now. So you can vote for a candidate that is looking forward, future thinking, on how we use technology and how we're not afraid of facts or science, right? Who use that's the whole notion of knowledge acquisition and utilization. Or you can not vote, and we're going to continue with the candidate who has opposed every effort to try to modernize the election system, because he always wins when it's not modern, right? And so that motivated enough students to stand in line, and these students stood in line and voted. I think the last vote came in at like 4 a.m. because once you're in line, and if you choose to vote in person, make sure you get there in time. But it doesn't matter how long the line is. If you're in line before the poll closes, the time it's supposed to close, then you can vote. And it's what we call hold the line, stay in line, do not leave. We saw this in 2018 where people were being given disinformation. well, the poll closed at 7:30 here, and so you need to go home. And a couple of folks in line said, I don't think that's right. And what did they do? They pulled out their cell phone technology. You can see I got Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Pulled out their cell phone, right, and went online to find out what were the rules.
Yep.
And then they said to the people telling them that you can't vote, they're like, I'm looking at the law, right? So they use their technology to be able to say, I'm gonna use my technology because I know it's going to give me the information I need and I trust, and I'm going to stay in line. And they stayed in the line, you know? Yeah. So again, any way in which it's one of the biggest challenges for our country is how come we don't make this easy for people to vote? You know, a lot of people can't stand in line. They work. I can't stand in line for 10 hours and still have to raise a family or take care of a family member or walk the dog, right? And so again, the question for us as a nation, and as we think about who we're going to vote for, we need to think about who are those people that actually believe in technology as a tool to enable us in life.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that
A national holiday, yeah, David, I just saw that, a national holiday to vote. Other countries have that.
They do have, and I know when I lived in Australia, one of the oddest things was, or I thought was odd, because culturally it just didn't, I had a hard time wrapping my head in it. It was illegal not to vote, believe it or not.
Yes, that's right.
It was illegal not to vote. Yep. Because they had they had the day off, and everybody was like, got to go vote. I mean, it was just a mandate that they were going to go and do that voting, and to do that. And one of my friends took me with him so I could see how it happened. Mm-hmm. They're doing online type situations and moving in that area. And I think that we as the US could learn quite a bit from how other people have done and implemented these standards. Mm-hmm. But as we look at today, mm-hmm. it is to me safe and secure. And I think everybody needs to make sure that they get out and vote and make sure that their vote counts. And that's the most important message, I think, of mm-hmm. anything you can take away from here. Make sure you vote and that your vote counts, and that the US government has done quite a lot mm-hmm. to ensure the safety and integrity of the election.
Yeah. And when we think about it, and thank you, Patty, I saw Patty put in the chat that in California, you can track your vote once it's cast through a website to be sure your vote counts. Now, why can we do this in California? We can't do it in Mississippi. We can't do it in Delaware. Again, this is the 50-state challenge we've got. How do we take these best practices and replicate it and create a national voting protocol, not just a state? Again, a vestige of the past, just like the Electoral College, a vestige of the past. Why do we need a college? If one vote, one person, one vote, then let's have the one person, one vote as part of who we are as a nation. I think that becomes really a fundamental element. I would also suggest to folks, and I've got to find the website, but if you type in on your browser, the Election Performance Index, EPI, it's a great website. And it talks about, and it's out of MIT, which was one of the MIT and Caltech were two of the early entities that actually had credibility on looking at election insecurity. Dating back a period of time now. I know prior to the Chad, Gore v. Bush. But it's an excellent site, and it gives you tons of information. So you can see for yourself how things happen in elections, where they're areas. So it identifies like 17 critical areas. And for every one of these, as I look at them, and thank you for hosting this, WITI, because as I started to look at that, I've looked at that a million times, but I never looked at it thinking technology. And if we actually look at the 17 key areas that they talk about as a performance index, as part of that performance index, there's technology solutions for every single one of those.
Yeah, and I just went there, Renee, and looked at my state, Texas. And I'm surprised because it says, less than 1% of the mail ballots were rejected. Now that is, you know, my data scientist who works for me would say, yeah, but look at how they measured it, which is the degree to which mail and absentee ballots are rejected, measured as a percentage of all votes cast.
Right.
Okay, not a percentage of the overall mail itself, but you know, that's a pretty
low
good
Yeah.
number. And you know, just of who requested mail-in ballots, almost 14% didn't return them. I do hope, you know, that that's not the case this election. But I think people do need to go to the vote site that we talked about, and that, you know, the vote411.org,
and get
and
information
understand when those deadlines are for your areas. Because in some places it's too late to register to vote by mail. Some places we may be closing in on when the vote has to be posted.
Yes.
There's also some things, you know, there's this wonderful thing that you can pay the post office to make sure the mail got to where it's supposed to go. Pay the little extra so you can track your vote and make sure it got there if you're worried about it. Technology, again, is our friend. You know, you can go online and see that that your voter, you know, what you sent in was received appropriately and those kinds of things. So we use technology every day. I would like to see that technology pushed more into a more modernized voting mechanism as we move forward, to be honest with you.
No, absolutely. And then there are some states in which you can do same day registration. So that the registration period may be closed, but you can go in and walk up and you can register as long as you have your appropriate identification. Please make sure you bring a picture ID. And we tell you all of this because we know you all are also educators and have networks. And we really need everyone that believes in our nation and our democracy to encourage others to vote, to help them. You know, if they don't know how to do it, explain it. If they don't know how to go online, maybe you would walk them through it. You know, put them on the phone, get them online. I've learned how to do share screen just so I can get the technology help that I need. But we all have an opportunity to enable our democracy by enabling others. If you've got folks who want to vote in person, offer, you know, mask up and give them a ride. You know, those old school technologies still work. We just got to get people there and be willing to make the effort to educate others on what they can do and the importance of every person's vote. Every person who is old enough to vote and registered. And if you're not, check and see if your state has same-day registration. Some places registration are open, but you don't think you can get it in the mail in time. You know, you hear someone say, I want to register, they can get registered, they can download a registration form in their states, and you can fill it out at home and bring it to the registrar. Do that. And then once you're on voter rolls, if you know that you've registered, you need to double check to make sure you're on it. You can go online to check that. You can go online, again, vote 411, where's my polling place? My dad, I said to my father, who's 92, Daddy, make sure we get your absentee. I'm not voting absentee ballot. I said, why not? He said, I have voted in every election since I have been a United States citizen and starting in 1954. And I have never missed a presidential election, and I'm going to vote. So they have a, quote, caravan of seniors who are going to vote. There's like 10 of them who are all going to go together. You know, different cars, clearly different cars, but they're all driving up together so that they can vote, making it an activity. Because in COVID, you know, going out is not something that he does, but the notion that he's going to be in a carpool with some other people, you know, he's got our cousin driving him. It's an excitement. You know, it's part of his responsibility. As he says, you know, I served my nation in the military so that we could have this right to vote. And I don't take it lightly, and I am going to vote, and I'm going to cast my vote as I always have. I'm going to cast it. And he's, you know, old school, except for when he had to do the Chad voting, which was when they first moved to Florida. And it was so interesting because afterwards he tells me the story. He's like, I had to punch that hole puncher like 4 times before the thing actually worked. I said, well, did you make sure it went through? He said, oh, mine went through. The whole thing almost went down. You know, so again, So maybe we have a little bit of time now for some questions and answers, or questions and comments, or just hear some other voices, please.
You
Come
sure
on.
do. Thanks. No, so whoever would like, if somebody has a question, feel free to unmute. While you're deciding, I'm going to sneak my question in. So I do have my ballot. I'm almost done, researching a final couple of things. So I should probably take it to the poll place rather than mailing it, right? Is that the best? That's the best, I think, now, right?
Well,
No,
look at,
not necessarily. The mail, look, I get prescriptions from the mail. I get my clients pay me, some of my clients that still use checks. I know, Rhonda, your son don't have a checkbook, nor does half of my, Ronique, who's on my team, is on, I don't even know if she has a checkbook, because she's at that generation that's online, everybody. It's a way, and if you feel more comfortable, you do what makes you feel comfortable, but the mail is safe.
Okay.
as long as it meets the deadline so Jeff, if the deadline to have it postmarked has passed, don't put it in the mail. Okay. So, again, go to vote411.org and see what the rules are surrounding it. I see the one you've got, it looks like it's one of those where you fill in with pencil.
Right.
Is that right? So, make sure you check and make sure that you filled all of your circles in completely.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
You don't have stray marks.
No stray marks, please.
That's going to go through a machine. If it has stray marks, it gets kicked out, and then it's got to be hand figured out, which always is problematic.
Which happens after the election if the vote is too close to count, and then those go into the questions, like provisional ballots.
Yeah, so
no stray marks, Rhonda. Thank you.
No stray marks. Just make sure there's no stray marks. If you've changed something, make sure you've erased it completely. So it's not picked up. Make sure you use the right number 2. Mail-in ballots have a lot of things around it. And I remember from my time in Australia, I got one, I'm like, holy cow, there's a lot of rules here you got to follow. So make sure you follow all those rules completely. Some of them even say it needs to be signed and witnessed by somebody. Just make sure you understand the rules of your mail-in voting situation.
Right.
Renee,
similar.
when I had called the registrar of voters myself, and I asked her, how can I ensure my vote will be counted? She really discouraged me from putting it in a post office box. We know what's going on with the head of the post office. I would not encourage people to mail their vote. She suggested I go directly to one of the designated drop-off voter places, which is what I'll do. But I have been telling everyone, as I wish you would, not to use the post office.
Okay, see, and I'm going to differ here, because I think for a lot of people, they don't have the option of being able to go, number one. Number two, it is better for them to mail it than not, as long as they mail it on time and they complete the form properly. Number three, that's part of the challenge for us. It's been part of the scare that has been put out there, the disinformation. And yes, we know that the current administration's appointee to the post office has not been a person of integrity. However, our postal carriers are not the ones in question. The mail gets delivered. These are the same people who are bringing us our medication, our Social Security check. And so that is a viable and safe way. And I know we have a lot of people saying, bring it in. If you can bring it in, if that makes you feel comfortable. But I don't want to dissuade people from not voting. If the only way you're going to vote is to mail it, then I say mail it.
Right. If they don't have the option of dropping it off, but there have been tremendous number of incidents where people have found ballots thrown in garbage cans. So it's not a first choice.
Yes, and that didn't happen because of the post office. Those were happening because of the registrars. So I don't want to get people paranoid, but it wasn't the postal workers that were throwing mail ballots away. It was certain people of certain parties who, under the election administration, had access and destroyed them. It's not the post office. That was not a post office function. The decimation of ballots was not a post office function. That was the election administration officials' function.
I think, though, one of the big things that we just have to make sure is if you aren't going to use the postal service and you're going to drop it off, make sure it's a valid designated drop-off point.
Yes,
There
ballot.
has been some discussion. I know there was a recent ruling here in Texas where they were trying to just designate a spot. Can you see all of Houston trying to go to one spot to drop off ballots? So I'm glad that got overturned, but just make sure you're going to a valid drop off spot, and you should do everything to make sure that your vote counts.
Yeah, and so there was a question, is there a place to see the process that all ballots go through? I'm not sure who asked that question. Please clarify for me. I'm not sure.
Sure. Hi, this is Kathy. So
Hi, thank you for joining us.
Sure. I take my ballot, I either mail it or I drop it in a box.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to it? What do they look for? Who opens it? What's the process of making sure that it's valid and counted, and just that? Is it by state? Is it different? Is it
by state? It's by county. It's by even by municipality. That every state has a protocol that they follow, and then the county, it's the local registrars, right, that actually will be tasked with the management of the ballot. So even when you drop it into a predetermined election box, like if you're doing an early vote and you drop it in those predetermined election box, it then is within the jurisdiction of the local registrar, not the state, but the local. So whatever township you might be in, you have a registrar's office there, which is why I've been encouraging people to sign up. Now you can still sign up now and be trained to be an election official to help with the process. There's been a cadre, army of attorneys who are volunteering to be available starting last week, actually, quite a few, who are working with registrars to make sure that there's a greater integrity and that there's an external eye on monitoring the process. So it is very local specific as to where they get stored. Once the votes are, once the mail-in ballots come in, they go to that registrar. There's supposed to be a series of security protocols that once they're in, they are assigned, numbered, and then placed in a secure location. I don't want to say a box. I'm not sure exactly what they're put in. It varies. Some places it is a box. That it is a secure, like a lockbox type of thing, where they're placed, so that they can then be counted upon election day. Also, too, if you are not confident about, as Rhonda said, if you're not confident about the box, I would say go online and find out where your registrar's office is. And they may also have, like I know in DC, in our Office of Elections, they have boxes that you can drop it directly in. You can go into the building and drop it. They are going to be having boxes outside where they will have security that sits with the box. These boxes are not by themselves. Some of these, they are monitored with security because of concerns and stated concerns and about individuals trying to like go steal ballot boxes. I mean, some of this is, we tell the public this because we want them to be aware, but not because we want you to be scared. And, that's the balance that we walk between too much information on what happens to the elections and not enough information. And people are like, can you guarantee me that I can't guarantee anything. I know that we put it in there. It's up to the local registrar, and the more people of goodwill, of high quality character, integrity, that can sign up. You can even go right on to a Vote 411 and sign up if you'd like to, help this election. We're woefully short of election officials in every county because so many people are wanting to vote. And we've been encouraging a lot of our friends, colleagues, people with integrity to sign up. So we have eyes, if nothing else, we have eyes there of people who want to help others cast their ballot. And I say that not to cast it for them, but to help them so that they can go through the process and make sure that their vote is cast and then hopefully counted as intended. That doesn't give you a specific, it's as close as I can get.
No, you validated that it's diverse across even more granularly than by state. So thank you.
Yeah, which is a challenge for us. And again, looking at how we create a better system that's consistent across the board, even just to get a system within each, even if we just had 50 systems, as opposed to every state and every county has a different system, different equipment. Again, we haven't invested in the infrastructure of our democracy. And it's an opportunity. And I'll say one other thing, you know, how Rhonda was saying it's important. So much has been done since 2016. You know, the mere fact that we have Homeland Security, a lot of people never thought about Homeland Security in elections. Well, they have a role. They've been doing their due diligence. The National Security Agency, the intelligence community have been very aggressive since 2016 at monitoring and seeking to secure our vote.
Thank you very much.
Please vote like your life and the lives of your children depend on it, because it does. Yeah, Patty, that is right on point.
Exactly. We are a little bit after the hour, Renee. Sorry, I was so engaged in what you were saying, and then I heard ding, ding, ding. It was telling me it's over. But that was awesome. Thank you so much. We will, by the way, we have a video of this. I think our editor will clean it up really quickly. We'll have it up. Please share this with your friends. I think there was such great information. Rhonda and Renee, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me. I always feel great coming to WITI.
We love you, know, Renee, you're part of the family.
And thank you for including me, Jeff and team. I appreciate it.
Got it.
Great paneling with you, Rhonda. I look forward to talking to you as the election is going on, so I can be calling you on all kinds of cyber questions now.
Yes.
Okay, Renee.
And for those of you, by the way, that might be watching through our YouTube or LinkedIn stream, WITI.com for more information about WITI events and the rest of our Cybersecurity Awareness Month events. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.